Hey, come a little closer. Not to the screen, just closer to the quiet. If your day has been loud in the way only real life can manage, you don't have to carry that noise into bed with you. Tonight, you get to borrow a different kind of city, one built of timber and patience, resting beside wide rivers that know how to keep a secret. You stand in the present tense of an ancient evening, where the air smells faintly of resin and damp earth, and the horizon is stitched with the dark geometry of wooden walls. The palisades of Pataliputra rise like a forest that decided to learn discipline. Upright posts, sharpened crowns, and long stretches of wood that hold back the wild just by insisting, calmly, that it belongs outside. And yes, small reality check. You probably won't survive this if you're the type who needs constant stimulation every 12 seconds. This city asks you to slow down, and it will win. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and let me know how your day has really been, your worries, your exhaustion, or even a tiny joy that made you smile. I'm here to truly listen and offer the most sincere, heartfelt advice I can. Now turn off the lights. Take a deep, slow breath. Let your tiredness melt away, and gently close your eyes. Let's drift together into tonight's dreamlike lands. And tomorrow morning, if you still remember, send me a message and tell me what you dreamed. You arrive without fanfare, because the evening itself is doing the announcing. The sky is in that in-between stage, no longer bright, not yet fully surrendered, where clouds look like ash brushed across a bowl of blue-black ink. You feel travel in your legs, but it's the gentle kind of tired, the kind that doesn't demand anything from you except a slower pace. Ahead, the timber palisades hold the edge of the world. They don't feel like a single wall so much as a decision repeated thousands of times. A post, then another, each sunk deep, each chosen for its straightness, each crowned into a point that catches the last light like a line of quiet teeth. From a distance, the palisade looks almost soft, as if the city is wrapped in wood the way a person wraps themselves in a blanket. Closer, you understand the practical stubbornness of it. Timber doesn't apologize. Timber endures. You walk along the outer line first, not entering yet, letting your senses settle into the place like warm water into a cup. The ground near the wall is tamped firm, scuffed by feet that know their routes by heart. The air tastes faintly of smoke from cooking fires, and somewhere deeper inside the city a bell-like sound drifts and fades. Nothing sharp, nothing urgent, just a note that rises and returns to silence. The palisade isn't alone. It has companions, watchtowers spaced like steady breaths, platforms where shapes move in a slow pattern, and crossbeams that make the whole structure feel less like a barrier and more like a body with bones. You don't strain to see faces. You don't need to. Their presence is enough. Proof that the city is awake even when it's trying to look restful. And you notice something else. The wall is not only defensive. It's also a kind of horizon inside the horizon. It tells the mind where to stop worrying. Outside the timber line, the land can be unpredictable. Animals, weather, strangers, the sudden stupid luck of an accident. Inside, the city is arranged. Inside, there are routines. Inside, there are people whose whole job is to make tomorrow resemble today closely enough that you can sleep. You follow the palisade until you find a place where the wood changes tone, darker, shinier, touched by hands and oil. A gate area. The posts here are thicker, the joinery more careful, the smell of resin more pronounced, as if the city has dabbed perfume on its wrists. Your footsteps slow without you deciding to slow them. It's the sensation of approaching something large and old and agreed upon. Even the insects seem to cooperate, their buzzing smoothing into a soft, continuous layer like cloth. At the gate, the world feels shaped. The timbers are fitted together with a logic that is both simple and strangely elegant. Pegs and lashings, beams aligned, the grain of wood running like quiet rivers along each plank. You imagine the carpenters who chose each piece, not with romance, but with competence. They would have run their palms along the surface, listening for flaws the way you listen for the difference between tiredness and actual pain. You step nearer, and the evening breeze slides through narrow gaps, bringing you a new scent, water. Not a splash, not a spray, just the cool, mineral breath of a river that's close enough to influence everything. Pataliputra sits where waters meet, and even here by the wall you can feel it, like a steady hand on your shoulder. You don't enter yet. You tilt your head and listen. Inside the palisade, life is muffled but present, a cartwheel complaining, a distant laugh that doesn't ask you to join, the low hush of many people existing at once. Outside, the grasses stir. The last light thins. Somewhere, a bird calls as if it's checking whether you're still awake. The wooden points above you catch the final color of sunset, copper, then rose, then the faintest gold, before the sky decides it's done showing off. And in that fading, the wall begins to look less severe and more protective, as though its sharpness is meant for the night, not for you. You take a slow breath. The resin smell grounds you. The river scent cools you. The city's distant sounds wrap around you with the gentle certainty of people who have been doing, evening, the same way for a long time. Your shoulders drop a fraction. Your jaw unclenches. You realize you've been bracing yourself against what, exactly? The unknown, probably. The worry that you'll do something wrong, be too slow, too tired, too out of place. But the palisade doesn't care about your inner drama. It stands. It waits. It quietly suggests that you can stop auditioning for survival. You move your hand close to the timber, not touching, just near enough to feel its presence. The wood holds the day's warmth, faint but real, like a stone that has been in sunlight. That warmth meets your skin through the air, and it's absurdly comforting. Then, finally, you angle toward the opening, letting the gate become more than a landmark. You let it become a threshold. Not just into a city, but into a different pace. And as you step forward, the palisade behind you doesn't feel like it's closing you in. It feels like it's closing the world out. You cross the threshold the way you slip into sleep, slowly at first, then all at once, and suddenly you realize you're inside. The gate timbers loom above you, not dramatic, not theatrical, just undeniably present. The wood here has been handled so often it has developed its own kind of polish, a muted sheen where palms have pushed, where shoulders have brushed, where ropes have slid over the same edges until the grain has softened. You catch that scent again, resin, warmed by friction and sun, now cooling into the night like a memory of daylight you can still taste. Behind you, the outer air feels wider. In front of you, the city feels arranged. Not rigid. Not tense. Just composed. Like someone has taken the chaos of living and lined it up into something you can carry. You walk forward, and the soundscape changes immediately. Outside, noises had room to spread and lose meaning. Here, the same kinds of sounds, footsteps, wheels, distant work, are contained by walls and lanes, so they become softer, more predictable. Even your own breathing seems less exposed. The palisade does that. It doesn't just stop intruders. It stops the mind from running too far. You look up. The first watchtower rises like a wooden lighthouse, square-shouldered and practical. From below, you can see the lattice of beams and braces, the simple geometry of strength. A figure moves at the top, more silhouette than person, and the motion is unhurried. No frantic scanning, no nervous shifting. Just the slow, steady sweep of attention, like someone turning a page. That steadiness spreads into you without permission. You keep walking, letting the gate area drift behind. The lane inside the wall runs parallel to the palisade, as if the city keeps a quiet corridor for its own guardians. The ground is compacted, worn down into a firm path that has learned the weight of many feet. Here and there you notice grooves, cart tracks that curve towards storage yards, toward inner streets, toward wherever the city keeps its necessities. And you start to sense the rhythm of patrols. Not in a cinematic way. No stomping boots, no sharp commands. Just intervals. A soft footfall approaching, then passing. The faint clink of something metal, maybe a buckle, maybe a tool, then silence again. A pause long enough for your brain to stop anticipating danger. Then another pass. Like waves. Like breath. It's strange how quickly your body believes it. Your shoulders, which had been holding themselves like they were expecting to be corrected, loosen a little more. Your eyes stop darting. You begin to look at details instead of scanning for threats. That's what safety does when it's done well. It gives you your attention back. The towers repeat along the palisade line, spaced with a kind of calm mathematics. Between them, the wall is continuous timber, upright posts bound and braced, their points now dark against the star-pricked sky. And along the inside edge, small structures nestle like practical afterthoughts, sheds for tools, stacked bundles of firewood, coils of rope that smell faintly of river and tar. You notice how the city uses wood the way other places use stone. Wood is everywhere, but not in a flimsy way. It's thick, layered, repaired. It creaks sometimes as it shifts with temperature, and the sound isn't ominous. It's almost conversational, as if the wall is quietly clearing its throat. The palisade is alive in a simple sense, responding to heat and cold, to rain and dryness, to the pressure of time. You pass a section where the timber has been patched, newer wood slotted into older, the color slightly different, the grain tighter. Repairs aren't hidden here. They're displayed without shame. The city seems to say, yes, things were down, yes, we fixed them, yes, we keep going. It's a message you didn't know you needed until it lands. The lane begins to widen, and you catch glimpses of deeper streets branching inward, dim pools of lamplight, shadowed doorways, the suggestion of courtyards beyond. You smell cooking, grain steaming, spices warming in oil, something sweet that reminds you that even large capitals are made of small dinners. A little farther on, the river's influence returns, cooler now. You can't see the confluence yet, but you can feel it in the air, the way moisture sits on your skin, the way scents travel differently, the way the night seems to breathe heavier. Somewhere overhead, a bird settles into a beam. You hear the soft flutter, then stillness. The city holds space for creatures too, as long as they don't cause trouble. Even that feels comforting, a place that doesn't have to fight everything that moves. Your feet carry you toward a junction where the palisade corridor meets a broader internal road. Here, the city's order is more visible. A post with markings stands near the corner, simple signs for direction and distance, practical guidance rather than decoration. A small lantern hangs from a bracket, its flame protected by a clay shade that turns bright light into a softer glow. You pause under it, letting the warmth of the lantern touch your face. Not much. Just enough to remind you you're here. And then you realize something about the patrol rhythm you've been sensing. It's not only for defense. It's for reassurance. It's the city's way of telling its own people, over and over, throughout the night, you can sleep. We're awake for you. That thought slips into you like a blanket tucked around your shoulders. You walk again slowly, because there's no reason to hurry. The palisade line continues beside you, and with every few dozen steps you feel the city's quiet competence. The spacing of towers, the placement of lanterns, the smoothness of the path, the way ropes and tools are stored where they'll be needed. Even the sounds cooperate. A cart passes somewhere deeper in, but the wheel's squeak fades quickly, swallowed by walls and distance. A dog barks once, then quiets, as if it remembered you're trying to rest. The night insects keep their steady chorus, but here it's softened by timbre, filtered into something almost musical. You glance back once, not because you're worried, but because you want to register the threshold you crossed. The gate area is now a darker shape behind you, and beyond it the outer world is only an idea. The palisade holds that idea at bay. Inside, the lanes and towers hold you in. You keep moving, letting the corridor guide you toward the heart of the city, trusting that if anything goes wrong, if a rope snaps, if a fire flares, if a stranger stumbles, there is a structure for it, a rhythm, a practiced response. And for the first time in what feels like too long, your mind stops rehearsing disasters. It simply walks. You drift away from the palisade corridor and let the city's inner streets take over, and the change is subtle at first. Less timber looming beside you, more timber living around you. Walls become homes. Beams become door frames. Posts become porch supports. The same material that guarded the boundary now holds up everyday life, as if Pataliputra is gently insisting that protection and routine are the same thing, just expressed differently. The road widens, then divides again, and you realize the city doesn't spread like a spill, it spreads like weaving. Long lanes run straight for a while, then smaller paths stitch between them at angles that feel practical rather than planned for show. If you could float above it, you'd probably see a pattern like a mat, firm strands and cross strands, tight where the city needs strength, looser where people need room to breathe. Your feet find a pace that matches the place, unhurried, attentive, mildly curious in the way you get when you're finally not bracing for something. The lantern glow behind you fades, and ahead you pick up new pockets of light, oil lamps tucked into niches, flames shaded by clay or metal so the brightness becomes soft and safe. The city doesn't seem interested in harsh illumination. It prefers the kind that lets your eyes relax. A faint breeze slides through the lanes, carrying the smell of cooked grain and damp wood, and underneath that, always that, the river's cool breath, as if the confluence is somewhere in the city's lungs. The air here feels lived in. not perfumed, not scrubbed for visitors. Just honest. You notice the ground first. It's not perfectly smooth, but it's cared for. Packed earth, worn boards in places that get muddy, small drainage channels that guide rainwater away with quiet competence. Near one corner, a shallow gutter gleams with leftover moisture, reflecting a piece of night sky like a thin ribbon. Someone has placed stones along its edge so feet don't slip. It's such a small thing, and yet it gives you that same feeling the watchtowers gave you. Someone thought ahead, so you don't have to. You pass a courtyard gate, open to the lane, and your eyes catch a glimpse of domestic order, stacked firewood under a lean-to, clay pots lined in a row, a bundle of reeds drying in a neat fan shape. Nothing is displayed for admiration. It's simply placed where it belongs. The city seems to be full of this quiet placement, objects resting in their correct spots, as if the whole capital is trying to model a calmer brain for you. And then you meet the early risers, though meet is too dramatic a word. You share the same air. You witness their existence. They move like people who have made peace with morning while most of the world is still bargaining with sleep. A figure crosses a lane carrying 2 water vessels balanced with practiced ease. The motion is steady, not strained, and you find yourself appreciating the simple physics of it: weight distributed, steps measured, breath kept low. Another person kneels near a threshold, sweeping with a broom made of stiff grass or rice husk, pulling dust into a small pile with strokes that are almost meditative. The sound is soft, brush, brush, pause, like someone smoothing wrinkles out of the day before it begins. You realize you've been taught a lesson without anyone lecturing you. The city is cleaned into being. Every morning, it's rebuilt in small gestures. Farther along, you see signs of the night workers too, the late sweepers, the ones who tidy after the last cart passes and the last cooking fire dims. Their evidence is in the details. A lane that smells faintly of wet earth where someone has sprinkled water to settle dust. A corner where refuse has been gathered into a neat heap for removal. A broken twig cleared off the path like a tiny act of kindness. Even without seeing them, you can feel their presence the way you feel warmth lingering in timber after sunset. You turn into a narrower lane, and the sounds change again. Here, the city is closer to your ears. A roof beam creaks gently as it cools. A pot lid clinks somewhere behind a wall. A goat, or something similarly unimpressed by human plans, shifts and snorts softly in a yard. The world is not silent, but it's calm. The noises don't compete. They simply exist, each one taking its turn. You keep walking, letting the lanes guide you as if they already know you're here. The buildings are mostly timber and woven materials, strengthened by posts and beams that cast long shadows. Some walls are plastered or daubed, pale in the low light. Others show the texture of woven panels, the pattern repeating like the city's own signature. At a junction, a small platform holds a lantern, and beneath it sits a shallow bowl, water, perhaps, left for travelers or for anyone who wants to rinse dust from their fingers. You don't overthink it. You simply appreciate the gesture. You dip your fingertips lightly, feeling the coolness, then let your hand fall back to your side. The sensation lingers like a quiet reset. A little farther on, the lane opens into a broader street, and you get your first sense of the capital's breadth beyond defenses. The road stretches ahead with a patient confidence, lined by compounds and small shops, storage areas, and open spaces where carts can turn. It's a city designed to move goods, people, and decisions without constant friction. You can almost feel the administrative heartbeat somewhere deeper inside. But out here, it's still all about daily life: carrying, sweeping, stacking, repairing. You catch the scent of fresh cut wood again, stronger now, and you follow it with your attention. Near a workshop frontage, timber offcuts lie in a tidy pile, and a few long beams are propped up, ready for use. The place looks like it has been working late, or has risen early. Either way, the rhythm is the same: hands shaping wood, wood shaping the city. And you think, not unkindly, that if your own life had half this level of routine maintenance, you might stop feeling like you're one bad email away from collapse. The city doesn't pretend it's effortless. It just keeps doing the small things. As you walk, you begin to recognize patterns: lanes that slope gently toward drainage, courtyards that catch breezes, shaded areas where people can pause without blocking movement. The design isn't flashy, but it's humane. It's a place built by people who understand bodies get tired, feet get sore, tempers get sharp, and therefore the environment should do what it can to soften those edges. You let that understanding settle into you. The woven mat streets keep carrying you forward, and the early risers and unseen late sweepers keep stitching the city together behind the scenes, turning a massive capital into something that feels, improbably, like it can hold you. And somewhere ahead, past these calm lanes, past the soft lamps, past the quiet competence, the river air grows cooler again, as if the confluence is about to step into view. The river announces itself before you see it, the way a large presence always does, through temperature, through scent, through the subtle change in how sound travels. The air cools and thickens with moisture, and every lantern flame you pass seems to burn with a softer edge, as if even fire becomes gentler near so much water. You follow that coolness like it's tugging a ribbon tied around your wrist. The streets slope almost imperceptibly. Not dramatic, not steep, just enough that your body understands you're moving toward a lower place, toward a basin where the city gathers its busiest breath. The packed earth underfoot grows darker in patches, and the timber along the sides of the lane shows faint water stains, as if the river has reached here in past seasons and left its signature quietly, without needing applause. Then the lane opens, and the confluence is there. Not a single river, but a meeting, two broad bodies of water pressing close, sliding past each other, blending and resisting in slow, muscular swirls. Under moonlight, the surface isn't flat, it's textured like fabric. One current catches light in thin, rippling ribbons. Another holds darker, heavier folds, as if it's carrying more silt, more stories, more stubbornness. Where they meet, the water turns complicated, eddies and seams and soft whirlpools that look like the rivers are whispering to each other in a language older than the city itself. You stand for a moment and let your mind quiet down enough to see it properly. The confluence doesn't demand your attention. It simply makes your thoughts slow, the way a deep voice can make you listen without raising its volume. The docks stretch along the bank in long timber platforms and smaller branching piers, each one shaped by use. Posts rise from the water with ropes looped around them, the fibers darkened by wet and time. Planks creak when weight shifts. The wood here is different from the palisade wood, less stern, more worn, its edges softened by countless footsteps, its surfaces polished by saltless river spray and the steady friction of work. You smell tar, damp hemp, fish, grain dust, and that clean mineral note that water carries when it has traveled far. The whole dockside area feels like the city's lungs, taking in goods and breathing them into streets, exhaling people and sending them out again. It's busy, but not frantic. The motion is steady, like an organism that knows its own rhythm. Boats sit low in the water, their hulls dark, their outlines softened by night. Some are broad and sturdy, built for weight rather than speed. Others are slimmer, ready to slip along currents with less resistance. You see bundles stacked under woven coverings, clay jars packed tight with straw, baskets shaped to hold grain or produce, timber crates braced with rope. Even in the dim light, you can feel the careful logic behind it. How to keep things dry, how to keep them balanced, how to keep them from shifting when the river decides to be difficult. Your hosts, those quiet guides who have been in the background of your walk like steady hands, become more present here, not through speech, but through movement. They angle their bodies in ways that show you where to step, where the planks are slick, where ropes might trip you. They point with a tilt of the head, a subtle gesture of the hand. The guidance is wordless and practical, as if the dockside itself has taught everyone a shared choreography. You step onto a timber platform, and the wood flexes faintly under you, not weak, just alive, responding to weight the way a tree responds to wind. The river below slaps softly against posts, a wet sound that repeats with calming regularity. Your brain starts to categorize it as a sleep sound. It's the same repetitive reassurance as the patrol rhythm, just made of water instead of footsteps. You walk along the dock, letting the confluence stay in your peripheral vision like a slow-moving painting. The moon's reflection breaks and reforms with each ripple, and you find yourself watching it the way you watch your own breath when you're trying to calm down, rise, shimmer, dissolve, return. The dockside lamps are small, sheltered, designed not to fight the darkness but to puncture it gently. Their light falls in pools, leaving stretches of shadow between. Those shadows are filled with motion, hands lifting, bodies turning, ropes sliding. The workers here move with the economy of people who have done the same task so long that the work has become a kind of quiet meditation. You notice the confluence's influence on sound too. Voices, if there are any, don't carry far. The water seems to swallow sharpness. Even when something clatters, the river dampens it, smoothing the edges. The whole scene feels padded, like the world has wrapped itself in thick cloth so you can rest. Near the edge of one pier, a boat nudges in, and the contact is gentle, a soft thud, then the squeak of rope tension as it's secured. You watch the rope line tighten around a post, and something about that simple action, loop, pull, settle, feels comforting. The city is full of loops and pulls and settles. It's built on the idea that things can be held in place. You lean slightly over the water, not too far, just enough to feel the coolness rise to your face. The surface reflects fragments of dock beams and lantern light, broken into wavering shapes. You see your own silhouette as a smear of shadow, and it's strangely freeing. You don't need to be sharply defined here. You can be a soft outline in a world that accepts softness. The confluence keeps moving, indifferent to your presence, and yet somehow accommodating. It carries boats the way a tired person carries thoughts, steadily, patiently, with the inevitability of flow. You watch the scene where the two currents meet, and you imagine it as a boundary that doesn't fight. It blends without losing itself. It shares space without becoming chaotic. It's a lesson delivered in water, you can meet something different and still remain whole. Your hosts guide you farther along, toward a busier cluster of platforms where goods are being staged. You see stacks of grain sacks under woven mats, jars arranged in rows, timber poles laid out for repairs. The dockside is not just arrival and departure, it's preparation. Everything pauses here long enough to be counted, checked, balanced, and made ready for the next movement. And as you stand in that steady dockside rhythm, river breathing, timber creaking, lanterns glowing, you realize you're being carried too. Not by a boat, not yet, but by the city's calm competence. The confluence is doing what it has always done, bringing things together, sorting them gently, and sending them onward. You let that be enough. You let the water do its slow work on your mind, smoothing the day's sharp corners, pulling your attention into the present, until all you have to do is stand and breathe beside two rivers trading secrets under the moon. You stay on the docks long enough that the place stops being a scene and becomes a system, and your body begins to learn it the way it learned the patrol rhythm by the palisade, through repetition, through the comfort of predictability. Your hosts guide you closer to the working heart of the platforms. You step over a coil of rope darkened by river water, then around a stack of planks waiting to replace a worn edge. The wood smells different here than the wall's resin-sweet timber, riverwood, damp, tar-touched, familiar. A weighing area sits under a plain canopy. The scale is simple, a long beam, a pivot, and hanging pans that sway faintly even when nobody touches them, as if the air keeps testing balance. You watch until you can feel the rhythm. A sack is lifted, two people sharing weight with practiced ease. It lands in the pan with a soft thump. The beam dips. Small stone weights are placed one by one in the opposite pan, and the beam rises, hesitates, then settles into level. That settling is the sound of agreement between matter and measurement, like a lid finally fitting a jar. Nearby, tallies are scratched onto a wooden board with quick certainty. No one performs surprise at the numbers. The board is not drama. It's a memory aid for a city that refuses to rely on anyone's tired mind. Goods are staged in neat clusters. Grain sacks are piled with their mouths turned inward, guarded from moisture. Clay jars sit cushioned in straw. Baskets are stacked so air can pass. Crates are braced with extra rope, because even sturdy wood has limits. You notice quick markings on fiber and wood, chalk strokes, ink smudges, little symbols that tell a handler what goes where. The river mist tries, gently, to blur those marks, so woven covers are tugged into place and corners are weighted down, like someone tucking a blanket over a sleeping child. You drift closer to the ropes, and your hosts show you, without words, how everything here is held. A rope isn't just a line, it's a decision. The fibers are twisted tight, rough enough to bite your palm, tarred in places so the river can't chew them to threads too quickly. Knots here are strong without being spiteful, loops that cinch and hold, hitches that lock under tension, ties that can be undone without a fight. A length of rope is laid across an empty plank, an invitation disguised as convenience. You pick it up carefully. It's heavier than it looks, and it smells like wet hemp and sun-cured tar. You wrap it around the post the way you've watched others do, once, twice. Then copy the motion of a hitch, tugging to test it, easing it into place. The rope answers with a firm, quiet grip. No applause. Just reliability. You don't become a dock worker in a minute. Your hands still look like they've lived a gentler life. but you do feel the logic of the work settle into your muscles. Lift, place, loop, pull, check, breathe. The steps repeat until thought becomes unnecessary, and that's when the mind finally gets to rest. A boat rocks against its mooring, and you notice how the whole system accommodates movement. Posts give a little, rope stretches a little, water lifts and lowers the hull in patient pulses. Even the scale beam sways faintly, a reminder that balance is alive, not frozen. Your hosts draw you toward a tallying table where small tools rest in tidy order: seals, cords, marking clay, a bowl of sand for drying fresh scratches on wood. The table edge is worn smooth where elbows have leaned, and you can almost feel the late-night carefulness that lives here. Count again, match again, let the city sleep. You glance back at the confluence seam in the water, and the lesson returns. Two currents meeting, blending without chaos. The dock is the human version of that seam. Things arrive from one place, things arrive from another, and here they're sorted, steadied, and sent onward. It's trade, yes, but it's also caretaking. The city feeds itself through these hands. A lantern swings slightly overhead, and its light makes rope fibers shine like tiny threads. You realize, with a faint internal smirk, that mystery is often just distance. Stand close enough to the work, and it becomes beautifully plain. At the edge of a pier, repairs are underway. A plank has been replaced recently, new wood against old, and the seam is fresh and pale. A smear of sap glints where it was fitted. The smell is sharp and familiar, like the palisade gates resin carried here by the same craft. Wood holds the city together at every scale, from sharpened wall posts to the humble boards under your feet. You linger, letting the steady work wash over you. The thump of sacks, the scrape of timber, the creak of posts, the water's soft slap, the quiet click of a knot settling into place. It's a lullaby made of labor. And as you stand there, surrounded by honest hands and measured weight, you begin to feel something you didn't expect in the middle of trade, a gentle trust. Not blind trust, just the simple belief that if you let yourself go soft for a moment, the system will still hold. For tonight, that's enough. You let the dock teach your body how to stop clenching, one rope loop at a time. You leave the confluence without turning it into a moment. Your feet simply drift inland, and the dockside rhythm, ropes sliding, timber creaking, water slapping, fades behind you like a song moving to the next room. The phantom roughness of hemp still sits in your palms, a reminder that your hands can hold something steady. The river air follows too, cool and mineral, but it thins as the streets rise. The market reaches you first as scent, warm grain, oil heating, spices waking up, and a quiet sweetness threading through it all. Darkness still rests over the city, but it's punctured by small, sheltered flames, clay lamps under canopies, lanterns hooked to posts, a smear of light caught and returned by something polished. Then the lane opens and the market is there, breathing like a living thing that knows its own pace. Stalls line a broad street, timber frames with woven walls, quick reed awnings, cloths stretched tight over poles. The ground is packed smooth by countless feet, and you can read traffic patterns in the earth, shiny where people pass most, rougher at the edges where baskets sit. Carts can move through the middle if they must, but tonight the space belongs to the softer choreography of buying and carrying. Your hosts guide you with the same wordless care they used on the docks. Subtle angles, a gentle pause before a slick patch, a hand that steers you away from a rope coil. you realize the market has its own kind of safety. Not watchtowers, not patrols, but habit. People know where to stand, how to slip past, when to wait. The crowd becomes predictable enough that your shoulders stop trying to armor themselves. Grain is the first thing your eyes truly settle on. Sacks of rice are stacked like pale dunes beneath lamplight, their seams turned inward. Nearby, baskets brim with lentils and beans, each pile shaped into a neat mound as if abundance must be disciplined to be trusted. When a scoop dips in, the grains flow like water for a second, then settle, disturb, then calm again. It's an annoyingly good metaphor for your brain, and yes, you notice it. Measuring tools sit everywhere, treated with quiet seriousness. Stone weights are lined up in a row, smoothed by years of handling. A beam scale hangs from a crossbar, swaying faintly even when no one touches it, as if balance here is always being tested. Lengths of cord are knotted at regular intervals for cloth. Even spice bundles are tied with consistent twists, fairness practiced in small motions. Oil gleams in clay jars like slow gold. Powdered spices glow in low heaps, turmeric, cumin, coriander, while dried leaves and seeds sit in bowls like concentrated weather. The smells are warm enough to make your breathing slower, as if the air itself is a hand on your chest saying, easy. And then that glimmer appears between necessities. Lacquered boxes reflect lamps and curved highlights. Beads return light as tiny sparks. Metalwork flashes dull silver or warm bronze. Bangles rest in quiet coils. Even plain household objects, bowls, hooks, hairpins, look built to last. You feel the urge to treat these things as treasures, but the market refuses to romanticize itself. Nothing here is an artifact. It's life, cooked with, worn, repaired, handed down. Beauty isn't separate from usefulness. It's folded into it the way the city folds timber into everything from walls to spoons. Small blessings move through the crowd without fanfare. A pinch of grain set aside near a lamp, a thread tied around a bundle, a quick mark traced on a jar lid before it's carried away. You don't need the exact meaning to feel the intention, people asking the world, politely, to be less cruel. Fabric hangs nearby, indigo, russet pale cotton, pattern weaves that look, for a second, like river ripples caught in thread. Fingers test edges, check thickness, search for flaws with calm focus. A knotted cord measure stretches, relaxes, stretches again, repetitive enough to lull you. Bargaining happens mostly in posture and pace. Pause, counter, step back, lean forward, agreement. No shouting, no theater. A familiar scent drifts in, resin, faint and sweet, and you turn toward a carpenter's stall. Small wooden objects sit in tidy rows. Ladles, handles, pegs, boxes, toys. The same timber logic that held the palisade shows up here in a latch that won't fail. What holds this city together at every scale, quietly doing its job. The river's influence lingers even here. Fish baskets are covered with damp cloth. Water jars sit in shade. Produce is stacked to let air pass. Somewhere in the city's mind, the confluence is always present. Moisture, rot, freshness, the thin line between fine and too late. You move slowly through grain and glimmer, and you realize why your breathing feels easier. Everything has a place. Everything has a measure. Everything has a rhythm you can follow even when you're exhausted. In the middle of trade and lamplight, you feel oddly held, by routine, by fairness, by the steady repetition of small reliable motions: scoop, weigh, tie, cover, carry. Your day's sharp edges soften. The market doesn't ask you to be impressive. It only asks you to be present, and even that feels optional, like you could half sleep through this and still be safe. And somewhere deeper ahead, beyond these stalls and lantern pools, the city's bigger stories wait. Palace order, jeweled rumors, peacock-throne lore. But for now, Pataliputra teaches you something simpler. A capital is built, night after night, by ordinary hands refusing to let life fall out of balance. You leave the brightest part of the market without noticing the exact moment you do it. The air simply cools a fraction, the smells shift from spice and oil to damp clay and fresh shavings, and the crowd thins into quieter currents. The street narrows again, the lantern pools grow farther apart, and the city's sound becomes more intimate, less a collective hum, more a series of small, close actions. Your hosts guide you into a lane that feels like it was designed for hands, not for spectacle. A courtyard entrance opens to one side, timber posts framing a shaded pocket of space, and you step through as if you're stepping behind the scenes of the capital's calmness. Inside, the light changes. It's softer, filtered through woven screens and overhanging eaves. Shadows sit in corners like settled dust. The air smells of wood that has been cut recently, sap still faintly alive in it, and the scent takes you straight back to the palisade gate where resin clung to the evening. Here, though, timber isn't defending anything. It's becoming things. Planks rest on low supports. Shavings curl in pale ribbons across the ground, and you catch yourself wanting to pick one up just to feel how thin and delicate it is. A set of simple tools lies in tidy order: blades, chisels, a mallet whose handle has darkened where hands have gripped it for years. The arrangement isn't precious, it's efficient. The tools are placed the way you place things when you don't want to waste your own time later. Someone works at a bench, and even without hearing words, you feel the presence of concentration. The motion is repetitive: press, shave, check, press again. Each pass is small, controlled. No dramatic swings. No ego. Just the steady stripping away of what doesn't belong until the shape emerges clean. Your mind, which loves to rush ahead and demand results, doesn't get rewarded here. Patience is the only currency that buys progress. Your hosts steer you along the courtyard edge where pieces are drying: wooden handles, fitted joints, small boxes, pegs. Some parts are marked with charcoal lines, measurements drawn in quick strokes. You recognize the same calm math you saw at the dock scales, the same respect for balance you felt in the market. This city doesn't worship speed. It worships correctness. You move onward into another courtyard where the scent changes again: damp earth, smoke, and something mineral: clay. A potter's space sits half open to the lane. Shelves hold bowls and jars in different stages of life: raw and pale, leather hard and darker, fired and warm-toned. Some pieces are plain, some lightly patterned with simple grooves or stamped designs. You can see fingerprints in the clay on a few, tiny ridges left by a hand that didn't bother to hide its humanity. The potter's wheel is not always turning, but it seems to hold a kind of stored momentum, as if it remembers being spun and expects it will be spun again. You watch the shaping process long enough to feel your own breath sync with it. Clay responds slowly, and you can't bully it. Push too hard and it collapses. Move too fast and it warps. The whole craft is a gentle negotiation between pressure and restraint. You notice a basin of water nearby, its surface catching lantern light in a thin tremble. Hands dip in, then return to clay. Water, clay, motion, quiet and repetitive. The same confluence logic again, elements meeting, blending, becoming functional. Farther in, the air grows warmer and sharper, and you recognize the presence of heat before you see it. A workshop glows from within, orange light licking at the edges of a doorway. Metalwork. The smell is different here, charcoal, hot iron, faint acrid tang. And still, even with fire involved, nothing feels frantic. The glow is contained. The heat is respected. The rhythm is steady. Inside, metal is treated with the same calm discipline as wood and clay. Tools hang from pegs. Tongs rest in predictable places. A hammer leans where it can be reached without thought. You watch a piece of metal being heated, then moved, then shaped, not with violence, but with controlled force. The hammer strikes are measured. Each hit is followed by a pause, a check, a slight adjustment. It's the opposite of the way your anxiety tries to fix things by throwing energy at them until something breaks. Here, the lesson is painfully simple. Force without patience is just noise. Your hosts lead you along the edge of the workshop where finished items are set to cool. Hooks, nails, small blades, rings, fittings. Not fancy, not ceremonial, just the bones of daily life. Metal holds things together the way wood holds space together, the way clay holds water together. The city is a layered solution to the fact that humans are fragile and forgetful and hungry. You step back out into the cooler air, and the relief is physical, like loosening a tight scarf. The lane feels even quieter now, as if the workshops have absorbed your leftover tension and returned you to yourself in exchange for nothing. A splinter catches your attention in a wood shaving pile, and you think of it as a miniature problem that doesn't need to be dramatic to matter. In this city, even a small injury is treated like a real thing. You see a shallow bowl of oil set near a bench, likely for smoothing wood and also for soothing skin. The line between craft and care is thin. You keep moving through shaded courtyards where workspaces overlap with living spaces. Tools beside cooking pots, drying racks beside sleeping mats, repairs happening near doorways as naturally as breathing. You realize the entire city is one long workshop. Not a factory, not a machine, more like a household constantly maintaining itself. And you feel, unexpectedly, that your own mind is a kind of workshop too. It shapes thoughts. It heats worries. It tries to repair things. The problem is, you often demand results without honoring process. Pataliputra does not do that. Pataliputra makes you watch hands do the same small motion again and again until the motion becomes calm. You remember the palisades' timber teeth under dusk. You remember the confluence seen in moonlit water. You remember the market's measured scoops and balanced beams. Now you add another memory, the curl of a wood shaving, the slow obedience of clay, the controlled hammer strike that shapes heat into usefulness. Your hosts guide you toward the next lane, and you follow with a quieter body. Patience, you realize, isn't a personality trait here. It's infrastructure. You carry the workshop quiet with you as you slip out of shaded courtyards and into lanes that breathe cooler. The forge's mineral warmth fades, the clay scent thins, and the city returns to timber posts and soft lamp glow, less spectacle, more shelter. Your hosts guide you without fuss along a path that dips toward water. You feel it before you see it: moist air, cleaner night, lantern flames with gentler edges. Pataliputra doesn't glare at you. It seems to dim itself on purpose, politely cooperating with bedtime. The first shrine appears near the riverbank like a small thought you almost miss. It's low and practical: a timber shelf on stone blocks, a clay lamp under a curved shade, a shallow bowl, a scatter of simple flowers. No towering pillars. No intimidating grandeur. The flame glows just bright enough to slow your breathing. You stop because stopping here makes sense, the same way stepping carefully on wet planks makes sense at the docks. The river is close. You hear it working: soft slaps against posts, a hush over stones, a steady murmur that repeats until your mind loses interest in being dramatic. Repetition keeps showing up tonight: patrol rhythms by the palisade, market scales settling level, rope tightening and relaxing with the boat's slow rock. Now the river does it too. A basin sits beside the platform, dark water holding a faint reflection of the lamp. You dip your fingertips and touch your wrists, the coolness spreading like relief. It isn't a performance. It's a reset. Your body understands clean as safe, and your thoughts follow, a second late, like they always do. Offerings rest in quiet order. A pinch of grain in a small dish. A thread wound around a wooden peg. A smear of oil on the lamp's rim so the flame lasts longer. A couple of dull metal bits, tokens more than wealth. The shrine doesn't collect valuables. It collects intention, the kind people make before travel, before trade, before choices that can tilt a household off balance. You've been watching balance all evening. Dock weights. Market measures. Charcoal lines on a carpenter's beam. The metalworker pausing between strikes, checking, correcting, refusing to rush. This shrine feels like the same habit, aimed inward, a place to settle the beam inside your chest until it stops wobbling. You let yourself stand very still. Inhale, river cool. Exhale, lamp warmth. Inhale, damp timber. Exhale, whatever you dragged here from your day. The city doesn't ask you to confess it. It only asks you to breathe long enough that it stops gripping you. Along the bank, more small sanctuaries appear, some nothing more than a lamp on a post, some tucked into niches, some marked with pigments softened by rain. They don't compete. They coexist, like the rivers do, sharing space without trying to win. You remember the confluence scene, two currents meeting and blending without chaos. And you realize people build shrines for the same reason rivers meet, to keep moving without losing themselves. Your hosts lead you over ground that turns slick near the waterline. The river smell is stronger here, the clean mineral note threaded with wet earth. In one sheltered spot, a shrine is anchored beside a living tree, its base wrapped with cloth strips tied in neat knots. The knots look familiar: loop, pull, settle, exactly like the ones you practiced at the docks. It makes you quietly amused, because humans will turn any useful skill into a way of holding an invisible wish in place. A clay tray sits nearby with small pressed tablets left to dry, edges uneven, finger ridges visible. The imperfections are comforting. They match the potter's fingerprints you noticed earlier, proof that the city's calm isn't manufactured by perfection. It's manufactured by hands showing up again and again, doing the same small thing with care. You drift to an inlet where the water smooths into a darker mirror. A lamp stands low, and its reflection trembles, doubling the flame. Two lights. Like two rivers. Like two versions of you, the one that arrives braced, and the one that learns, slowly, to unclench. The urge to do everything correctly rises, because of course it does, and then it softens, because the shrine refuses to be complicated. Your hosts have brought a small bowl of grain, and you take a pinch. You place it on the platform gently, as carefully as a worker places weights on a scale. The gesture is almost laughably tiny, and yet your chest loosens as if you've set down something heavy. You rest your fingertips on the platform's timber edge. Cool wood, solid grain, no drama. It has held lamps through storms and summers. It has held the quiet hopes of dock workers, merchants, travelers. For a moment it holds you too, without demanding a story. The river keeps moving beside you. It doesn't promise you anything, and that's part of its comfort. It simply flows, carrying boats, carrying silt, carrying broken ribbons of moonlight and stitching them back together downstream. You think of the palisade timber teeth at dusk, sharp but steady, and of the market's measured scoops. All of it points to the same truth: steadiness is built, not found. When you finally turn from the waterline, you don't feel like you're leaving holiness behind. You feel like you're pocketing a small tool, wash, breathe, offer, settle, and taking it back into the city with you. The lantern pools ahead look warmer now, less like islands and more like a path. Behind you, the shrine flame keeps glowing, sheltered and patient, continuing its soft work for the next tired traveler who comes down to the river and asks, quietly, to be steadied. You follow the lantern pools back up from the riverbank, and with each step the air dries a little, as if the confluence politely releases you back into the city's arms. The shrine flame is behind you now, still doing its quiet work, but its steadiness stays in your chest like a small warm coin you can rub when your mind tries to sprint. The lanes tighten, then widen, then straighten into something more deliberate. You feel the shift before you can name it: fewer workshop smells, fewer market spices, more of a clean timber scent mixed with ink. People move differently here too. Not faster, just more measured. Your hosts guide you toward the administrative core the way a river guides a leaf. No force, just certainty. The street is broader and better kept. Drainage channels are clean. Lamps hang where they will light the ground, not where they look impressive. You pass a storage yard first, plain and intensely practical. Bundles sit under woven covers weighted with stones. Sacks are lined in rows. Clay jars are grouped by size. Cord knots are sealed with clay, thumbprints and press marks, so nothing can be untied without evidence. The loop and pull you practiced at the docks is here again, only now it carries official calm. A corridor leads inward, timber posts, a simple canopy, a floor packed firm and swept clean. The kind of clean that comes from repeated attention. You step into it and feel the city's pulse slow, as if you've entered the part of Pataliputra that handles decisions the way the docks handle cargo: weigh, mark, secure, release. Inside, the air changes. Ink, oiled wood, dry leaf and fiber, a faint tang of clay. Lamps are shielded and low, their light aimed at surfaces rather than faces, so the room becomes a soft pocket of focus. Tables sit steady. Bundles of palm leaf or bark sheets are tied with cord and tucked into niches like sleeping animals. These are not ornaments. They are the city's memory, braided into manageable parcels. You watch the movement of hands and realize this is a workshop too, just without shavings or sparks. A stylus scratches. A brush glides. A finger presses clay around a knot, then smooths the edge so it dries hard. The actions are small, precise, repeatable. The same lesson you keep collecting tonight. Patience is infrastructure. So is proof. Seals appear everywhere. Some are quick and simple, others carry fine pattern, tiny ridges catching lamplight. A seal is a promise hardened into shape. It says, "This has been counted, this has been authorized, this belongs where it belongs." You don't need to read the symbols to feel their effect. They shrink the number of things your brain has to hold at once. On one table sits a shallow tray of fine sand, kept dry like a little hoard of desert. A hand pinches it and lets it fall over fresh marks, the grains whispering as they land, drinking dampness so the ink won't smear. It's oddly soothing, like watching someone gently dust worries off a page. Reed pens rest in a neat line, tips stained dark. Even mistakes have their own calm treatment. A mark crossed cleanly, a note added, nothing ripped in frustration. The city corrects itself without tantrums. Your hosts guide you past a courtyard where a small pool sits still, reflecting beams and lamp glow in dark, unbroken lines. It isn't a shrine pool. It's just water kept quiet, like a pause built into architecture. Beyond the courtyard, you sense guard presence again, not aggressive, just present, like the watchtowers by the palisade. Here, the defense is for records and seals, for the city's organized thought. The silhouettes are steady. The attention is quiet. You feel oddly even safer. Sound behaves differently here. It dies quickly against timber and woven walls. Footsteps are softened by swept earth. Your own movements become gentler without you deciding to be gentler. You breathe more slowly. You stop anticipating interruptions. A ledger board rests on a low stand, lines and marks arranged in neat columns. It makes you think of the market scales settling level, of the dock beam finding balance, of the confluence scene where two currents meet and somehow don't fight. This is the human seam, trade meeting authority, goods meeting records, intention needing proof. It could be oppressive in a different mood. Tonight, it feels like a lullaby with rules, comforting because it keeps the world from sliding apart. And then you catch a new kind of weight at the edge of all this practicality. A lampshade carved rather than plain. A fragrance threaded into the air where there should only be ink. A glimpse of finer cloth moving past the doorway, like a thought you almost lose. The city's heart, it seems, doesn't beat only in numbers. It also beats in symbols. You don't chase that yet. You simply feel it the way you felt the river before you saw it. Somewhere deeper, beyond ledgers and seals, a story is being held in place the way a knot holds a boat, peacock-throne lore, glowing in the background, waiting for you to drift closer. For now, you let the administrative calm do its gentle work on you. You let the city's organized thought take some of the thinking away from your tired head. You follow your hosts along the corridor, deeper into the capital's steady pulse, where every mark and measure quietly insists that the world can be held together. You keep moving on the same quiet current, and the air shifts from ink and wood into something more carefully arranged. Lamps sit lower and are shaded more tightly. The corridor is swept so clean it feels like someone is trying to keep even dust from forming opinions. Your hosts don't become different people. Their pacing simply tightens. They take corners with a fraction more patience, the way you carry a bowl of water when you finally remember gravity exists. The city guides you through architecture, slight changes in width, gentle turns, posts set where you'll naturally slow. Your body volunteers quiet. Then the peacock appears. At first it's only a curve on a lintel, carved wood catching lamp glow. A second later, the curve resolves into a neck, then a head with that peculiar peacock angle, half proud, half absurd, as if the bird knows it's beautiful and also knows beauty is a ridiculous job description. Under the wavering light, the carving seems to breathe, not because it's alive, but because your attention has finally slowed down enough to notice detail. You walk a little farther and the motif repeats the way a scent repeats, subtle, then suddenly everywhere. A stamped mark pressed into clay around a cord knot. A woven pattern in a hanging cloth. A small metal clasp shaped like a feather eye. Even a door handle carved into a fan of lines that could be palm leaves, could be feathers, could be both. Because symbolism likes efficiency. It wants to be understood even by tired minds. The closer you drift toward the palace zone, the more the city lowers its voice. Footsteps soften. Movements become economical. The hush isn't fear, it's courtesy. You remember the river's shrine, how the flames sat under its shade, protected from wind. This feels like that, but scaled up. Pataliputra is shading its own stories, guarding them from the rough weather of ordinary noise. A courtyard opens beside you, and water sits still in a low basin, holding lamp reflections without breaking them. It's the opposite of the confluence seam where two currents meet and swirl. Here, stillness is the point. On a wall panel, a peacock tail fans out in painted or inlaid detail. The eye spots, circles within circles, catch light in tiny flashes. It's slightly unsettling if you stare too long, like the city is watching itself, but the feeling is gentle, more caretaking than suspicion. And this is where the lore begins to press in. Not as an announcement, not as a lesson. It arrives the way warmth arrives near a hearth. First you notice you're less cold, and only then you realize there must be fire nearby. A figure ahead pauses at a threshold for the length of one breath. Another inclines the head toward an inner passage and then looks away, as if staring too directly would be greedy. A hand touches the chest briefly, respect shaped into a small, repeatable motion. You don't need words to understand the direction of reverence. In your mind, the peacock-throne forms the way stories form when you're half asleep, a bright shape surrounded by shadow. You don't receive measurements. You don't receive proof. You receive a feeling, radiant authority, impossible elegance, a seat that is less furniture and more condensed myth. Somewhere deeper inside, beyond these swept corridors and shaded lamps, there is a throne linked to peacocks. Maybe it is carved and gilded, feather shapes catching torchlight like tiny suns. Maybe it is lacquered timber dressed with metal, made magnificent by belief as much as by material. Maybe it changes over years the way the palisade changes, patched, repaired, remade, yet the story stays stable because people need stability more than they need accuracy. You quietly appreciate how little certainty the legend requires. Your brain loves to demand receipts for everything, but tonight it's tired, and the city is kind enough not to hand you a clipboard. Your hosts guide you along a passage where cloth hangs in layers, deep indigo that reads nearly black at night, and a warm thread that glows instead of glares. The pattern suggests water and feathers at once, the same visual trick you saw in the market but refined into something that whispers, not shouts. Nighttime elegance, you realize, is a real thing. It wants to be admired in softness. The lore isn't only about beauty. It's about order. A throne is supposed to be a fixed point in a moving capital, a place where decisions become still long enough to be made. All night you've watched Pataliputra practice stillness, the scale beam settling level, the rope not cinching tight, the potter's clay yielding only to patient pressure, the ledger ink set so it won't smear. The throne is the ultimate. Settle. It says here, right here, the world stops wobbling. Whether that's true is optimistic. But the attempt matters. People need a center the way travelers need a dock post. They need a symbol that promises someone holds the line, the way the timber palisade holds the edge of night. The peacock, with its absurdly lavish tail, becomes the perfect emblem for that promise. Splendor that is also warning, beauty that is also watchfulness, a fan of eyes that suggests the city sees more than you do. You don't enter the innermost space. You remain in the outer hush where myth is allowed to stay soft. Your hosts steer you away from a brighter doorway and into a quieter passage, and you follow with relief. The most restful stories aren't the ones that show you everything. They're the ones that let you stand near a glow, warm your hands, and keep the shadows intact. You remain in the outer hush for a little longer, letting the peacock feather motif stay half seen, half imagined, and then the city nudges you away from shaded corridors and toward a glow that feels less official and more human. The lanes widen into a familiar market street, and the lamps multiply. Oil flames sit in clay cups along ledges and steps, each one protected by a small rim of baked earth so the wind can't be rude. Light pools on the ground like spilled honey, and the darkness between those pools is soft rather than threatening. You smell ghee, roasted grain, and something sweet that makes your tired brain briefly optimistic. Smoke rises in thin ribbons, not thick enough to sting, just enough to perfume the night with ceremony. A festival is happening, or maybe it's simply a night when people decide to be deliberate about joy. Doorways are dressed with fresh greenery, and small offerings rest near thresholds like polite requests placed on the world's desk. You move with your hosts along the edge of the crowd. People lean and pause and sidestep with an unspoken choreography that somehow works. The city that counted sacks and sealed cords now counts footsteps, and that quiet order lets you relax into the movement. Music drifts, distant and wordless to you, rhythm carried by hands and breath. It doesn't demand attention. It fills the air the way the river fills its banks. The beat arrives, softens, returns, and your chest starts to follow it without argument. You notice ash before you notice where it comes from. Tiny gray flecks float through lamplight like slow snow, catching brightness for a second and then vanishing. They land on shoulders and cloth, and nobody reacts with annoyance. Ash is accepted here as the gentle fallout of incense, offerings, and flame-fed wishes, dusting the air with a kind of lived-in memory. Your hosts guide you past food stalls. Clay pots simmer under lids that rattle faintly with steam. Flat rounds of bread puff and settle, as hypnotic as the scale beam you watched at the dock's finding level. A ladle dips and returns. Oil hisses softly. The smells bloom, warm, nutty, calming in the way real food can be when you're too tired to pretend you're above basic needs. You don't need to eat to feel comforted by it. Just watching is enough. Heat rising, steam escaping, repetition doing its quiet work on your nerves. A line of lamps leads toward a small open space where people have gathered, a widened pocket in the street. Figures move in a slow pattern, arms tracing arcs that mirror the river's curves. Cloth flashes in torchlight. Feet make soft percussive sounds against packed earth. You let it blur into a single impression, humans making rhythm together so the night feels less lonely. The peacock appears again, quietly. A fan-shaped decoration rests above a doorway, its eye spots glinting when torchlight shifts. Someone carries a small standard painted with feather patterns, colors muted but unmistakable in outline. The symbol travels through the crowd like a reminder that splendor doesn't live only behind palace walls. It leaks outward, softened and shared. Ash continues to fall in lazy spirals. A few flecks land on your sleeve, and you brush them away without urgency. The gesture is small and strangely satisfying, like clearing a wood shaving from your palm, like wiping water from your fingertips at the river shrine. Your mind begins making quiet callbacks on its own. The palisade timber teeth at dusk. The confluence seam under moonlight. Rope tightening around the dock post, holding a boat steady. The market's measured scoops. The potter's fingerprints. The seal pressed into clay. Now lamps and ash and distant rhythm. Different textures, the same insistence that the city survives by repeating small acts until they become dependable. You feel the urge to overthink the festival. Why this night? What rule you might break by standing in the wrong spot? And then the thought dissolves under your own sleepy sarcasm. The city is not testing you. It's just living. You let meaning stay soft. In a shallow gutter, lamp reflections tremble beside a thread of water, and you watch them wobble, settle, wobble again, until your thoughts learn the same gentle pattern. At the edge of the open space, a low fire burns inside a clay ring. Offerings sit nearby, and the flames accept them with a quiet crackle. Smoke rises. Ash drifts. The air smells sweet and faintly bitter. You watch long enough that your blinking slows, and you realize your body is doing what it always does when it finally feels safe. It starts trying to sleep. The city doesn't punish that. Even celebration here has lullaby elements built in. Steady rhythm, warm light, predictable motion, the soft repetition of hands tending flame. You stand, you breathe, and you let the ash fall like a blessing that doesn't need your belief to be gentle. When you finally turn away, following the lamp-lined street onward, the festival doesn't feel like a peak you must cling to. It feels like another layer of Pataliputra's calm competence, joy practiced with the same patient attention as carpentry, trade, and record-keeping. You carry the warm glow with you, and the last flecks of ash shimmer briefly in your hair before the night air takes them, returning them to darkness with the tenderness of a river reclaiming a leaf. You keep the festival's warmth on your skin as you drift away from the brightest lamps, and for a while the city feels like it's exhaling, content, slow, loosely stitched together by ash and rhythm. The lanes thin. The music softens into distance. The smell of roasted grain fades until it's only a memory that makes your stomach feel politely calm. Then the river air rises again, cool and wet, and you know you're moving back toward the docks before you even decide to. Mist begins as a suggestion, just a slight softening of edges, a gentler outline around lantern flames. A post that looked sharp a moment ago now looks blurred, as if the night has smeared it with a damp thumb. Your hosts continue forward at the same pace, but their bodies angle a little differently, attention narrowing the way it did near the palisade corridor. Not alarm, just readiness. You reach the confluence platforms, and the whole dockside has changed mood without changing activity. The water is still doing what it does, lifting hulls, slapping posts, pulling moonlight into broken ribbons, but the mist has come in like a curtain. Lamps glow as halos rather than points. Ropes disappear into whiteness a few feet from where they're tied. Even sound feels muffled, as if the river has decided to wrap everything in cloth. At first, it's almost soothing. The world gets smaller. Your eyes don't have to travel far. But then you sense it, the way people move when something is slightly wrong and everyone is trying, very hard, not to make it worse. A cluster of workers stands near a staging area where sacks and crates are usually arranged with that satisfying dockside logic. Rows, stacks, coverings pulled tight, cords sealed in clay. Tonight the rows are mostly intact, but one space looks off. A gap where something should be. Or a pile that is one bundle shorter than it should be. Your hosts guide you closer, and you see it clearly, a stretch of planks where straw impressions remain, the outline of a heavy bundle that was there recently. The surface is scuffed in a way that suggests something was dragged, not lifted. Not violently. Just hurriedly, as if someone assumed the next step in the system would happen the way it always does. You notice a clay seal fragment on the ground, small, pale, broken in two. The kind of thing that wouldn't matter to the river, but matters to a city that keeps itself together through proof. The fragment looks fresh, its edges sharp, dampness beating on it as mist settles. Your chest tightens a fraction. It's an old reflex. Problem detected. Imagine catastrophe. Sprint mentally until you're exhausted. The city has been teaching you a different way all night, so you try it. You slow your breath. You let your eyes move like a scale beam searching for level, not like a panicked bird. Mist beads on rope fibers. Lantern halos wobble. A boat creaks gently, the sound stretched by damp air. The workers' hands move in small motions, touching cord knots, checking marks, lifting a cover corner and setting it back down. No one thrashes. No one flails. The worry is real, but it's contained, the way fire is contained in a clay ring. Your hosts crouch near the scuffed planks and point with the simplest gesture, the drag line. A faint trail in dust and damp, leading toward a side pier. It's subtle, but once you see it, it becomes obvious, like noticing the confluence seen once your eyes learn where to look. You follow the trail. The mist makes the docks feel longer than they are, each step disappearing into softness. You step carefully, remembering wet planks, remembering how the rope loops can trip you if you stop paying attention. Your body returns to that dockside choreography. Step, pause, check, continue. Near a post, you find another clue, a small smear of grain dust, pale against dark wood. You hold your hand near it and see how the damp air has thickened it into a faint paste. Grain. So the missing bundle isn't jewelry or lacquered luxuries. It's necessity. That makes the worry sharper in a quieter way, because necessity is what keeps a city from turning mean. A bundle of rope sits near the post, and one coil is disturbed, as if it was grabbed quickly and dropped. Your mind tries to invent a thief, a villain, a dramatic chase. The mist refuses to support your fantasy. It keeps everything slow, softened, sleepy. You're left with the more likely truth, a mistake, a misplacement, a system momentarily out of alignment. You reach a side pier where boats are moored in tighter clusters, protected from the main current. Here the water is calmer, and the mist hangs thicker, turning the world into layers of pale gray. Lantern light floats above the surface like little moons that forgot how to rise. You spot a covered shape on a low platform, woven matting pulled over something bulky, corners weighted with stones. It's arranged too neatly to be a hurried hiding place, but too isolated to be part of the normal staging rows. Your hosts approach without suddenness, and you follow, heart steadying itself on routine. The matting shifts slightly in the damp breeze, and you see the corner of a sack, grain-colored cloth, seem familiar, the same kind you saw piled like dunes in the market. A cord is tied around it, but the knot looks different. Not wrong, exactly. Just not not confident. More like a household knot. A traveler's knot. Someone tied it to hold, not to prove. You crouch and look for marks. The dockside bundles have chalk strokes, tally scratches, sometimes a pressed clay seal around a cord. This sack has a mark, but it's faint, smudged by mist, rubbed by handling. The proof is there, half erased. Your hosts lift the matting carefully, the way a potter lifts a piece that's leather hard, supporting it so it doesn't crack. Underneath, more sacks are stacked, not many, but enough to matter. They're not stolen and hidden in some clever darkness. They're simply parked in the wrong place, as if someone moved them for shelter from mist or for easier loading, then forgot to report the change. The worry in your chest loosens, but it doesn't vanish. Because in a city like this, the problem isn't only, where is the grain? The problem is, how does the system trust itself again? A missing bundle shakes more than supply. It shakes the feeling that things will be where they're supposed to be, that seals mean what they mean, that the city's memory won't smudge under weather. You look back toward the main staging area. Through mist, lantern halos hover like patient eyes. The confluence keeps breathing, indifferent but steady. And you realize the next step is not a dramatic reveal. It's a gentle correction, recount, remark, retie, return the beam to level. The small problem has arrived, not with shouting, but with a gap in a row and a broken seal in wet dust. And as you stand there beside mislaid grain under drifting mist, you feel the city's quiet question settle into your hands. Can you help it find its balance again, calmly, without making the night sharp? You don't rush to solve anything, because the mist has already taught you what rushing does. It smears edges, makes you trip over what was obvious a second ago, and turns a small error into a bigger one purely through panic. So you do the only thing that has worked all night in this city. Dock logic, market logic, workshop logic. You slow down and let the pattern reappear. You stand beside the mislaid sacks under the weighted matting, and you watch the confluence seem the way you watch the scale beam settle level. Two currents, two textures, one meeting line. The rivers don't shout at each other when they mix. They just adjust. They find a new balance and keep moving. You try to copy that. Your hosts guide your attention back to the details that don't lie, even when weather does. The scuffed drag line on the planks. The broken clay seal fragment. The slightly amateur knot that held the matting down. You let each clue sit in your mind without immediately turning it into a thriller. This is grain, not a jewel heist. The city doesn't need your imagination right now. It needs your steadiness. You retrace your steps slowly from the side pier toward the main staging rows. The mist makes distance feel elastic, but your feet keep counting boards. Step. Pause. Look. Step. The timber under you is damp, and in lantern halo light you can see where moisture has darkened it into irregular patches. Those patches matter. A footprint in dry dust can vanish. A footprint in damp film leaves a faint gloss, a slight scuff where someone slid instead of lifted. You find them, subtle, but real. A few heel marks, a toe drag, a place where someone stepped too close to a post and brushed it, leaving a smear of moisture and grain dust on the wood. You follow the marks the way you follow the river's smell through streets, not with certainty at first, but with a growing sense that the path is there if you stop demanding it be loud. Near a stack of planks, a rope coil sits with its top loop out of place, like a sentence that ends in the wrong punctuation. You crouch and look closer. The rope is tarred and dark, but one section is newer, lighter, less saturated. It has been handled recently, fresh dampness in the fibers, faint grit pressed into the twist. Someone grabbed it when the mist rolled in, maybe to tie down covers, maybe to shift a load, maybe to do the sensible thing quickly without having time to do the documented thing. You straighten and let your gaze travel upward. Lanterns sway slightly, their halos overlapping. In the overlap, shadows become tricky. Your mind offers you its usual useless service, catastrophizing as entertainment, and you gently refuse. You've learned tonight that the city runs on refusal, refusing to let a scale remain unbalanced, refusing to let a plank stay broken, refusing to let a seal stay unpressed. So you keep following logic. The main staging area is still mostly intact, which is its own clue. If theft were the goal, the movement would be cleaner and more deliberate. Here, the gap looks like a mistake, an ordinary. We meant to come back for that gap. You scan the rows the way a ledger scans itself, not emotionally, just systematically. You notice that one woven cover sits slightly skewed, its corner pulled tighter than the others. Not wrong, just inconsistent. You approach, and your hosts angle you to the side so you don't step on a rope loop, because yes, the dock will happily punish you for getting cocky. You lift the cover edge just enough to see beneath, sacks stacked in the right place, but their chalk marks are blurred. Mist has kissed them, and now the letters look like tired handwriting after a long day. That blur is important. If marks are unclear, someone might misread a bundle's destination. A dock worker with full familiarity could still sort it by feel, weight, stitch pattern, the way the seam is folded. A newer hand might rely on the mark and get it wrong. No villain needed. Just weather and fatigue and the perfectly human desire to be helpful quickly. You follow the trail back toward the tallying table you saw earlier, where marks are scratched and weights are set and proof is made. The table sits under a canopy, and the lamp here burns steadier, less haloed by mist. The surface is worn smooth by elbows and years. A board rests nearby with columns of scratches, some darkened, some faint. Your hosts gesture toward the board, and you let your eyes take it in slowly, like letting sleep take you in. Lines represent counts. Counts represent trust. You spot a cluster of marks that appears fresh, deeper, darker, made recently. Next to it, older marks sit paler. The difference isn't dramatic, but it's readable. There's a mismatch. Not huge. The kind that could be fixed with a quiet recount rather than a citywide meltdown. You feel your breath ease again. This is not a catastrophe. This is a scale beam wobbling slightly because someone added a weight and forgot to note it. You look back toward the side pier. Through mist, you can barely see the weighted matting, the sacks tucked under it as if they're sleeping. That's the image that keeps your mind calm. The grain isn't gone. It's simply misplaced. Like a thought you set down in the wrong room and then spend an hour searching for, only to find it sitting politely where you left it while you spiraled. You retrace the likely sequence in your head, but gently, like telling yourself a bedtime story rather than building a courtroom case. Mist thickens. A boat's schedule shifts. Someone moves grain to a sheltered pier to keep it dry or to clear the main row for incoming goods. A seal is broken because the cord must be untied to lift and restack. The person means to reseal and remark, but another task interrupts. Rope needed, plank slick, lantern needs trimming, anything. The sacks sit under matting, safe but undocumented. A tally remains unupdated. A gap appears. Worry blooms. You can almost feel the moment where the system slips out of alignment, not because anyone is malicious, but because the city is large and hands are human and the night is damp. Your hosts guide you back along the drag line once more, checking the posts, the rope coils, the faint footprints. You confirm what you already suspect. The movement was short, local, and practical. No hidden path off the docks. No boat quietly disappearing into fog. Just a small relocation, a small lapse in marking, a small fracture in the city's confidence. You stand again at the seam between the main staging area and the side pier, and you look at the confluence water rolling past. Two currents meeting, correcting, continuing. The answer isn't going to be dramatic. It's going to be procedural. Recount. Retie. Reseal. Remark. Restore the rhythm so everyone can sleep again. And as the mist beads on your lashes and lantern halos drift like soft moons, you feel the next step forming. Not a chase, not a confrontation, just a calm return to the city's favorite skill, fixing small things before they become big things. You let the solution be what it always was, small, careful, almost boring in the best way. The city doesn't need a hero. It needs a rhythm restored. So you follow your hosts back beneath the tally canopy, where the lamp burns steadier and the mist feels less like a prank the night is playing on everyone's eyesight. Hands gather, not in a crowd, not in a frenzy, just enough people to make the work light. A few bring fresh cord. Someone sets down a lump of sealing clay in a shallow dish. Another person places a board flat, wipes dampness off it with a cloth that has seen too many nights like this. A scale beam hangs nearby, swaying faintly as if it's eager to participate in balance again. You stand close enough to help but not close enough to become the problem, an important skill that, tragically, not everyone masters. Your hosts guide you with small gestures, and you answer by keeping your movements slow, predictable, easy to read. The recount begins the way breathing exercises begin, one, then another, until your mind stops trying to invent extra steps. Sacks are checked by touch first, weight, seam, stitch pattern, because mist can smudge chalk but it can't rewrite fabric. Each bundle is lifted with 2 sets of hands. It settles onto the plank with a soft thump, and you feel the dock's familiar message. This is real, this is ordinary, this is fixable. The tally marks on the board are adjusted with care, not with accusation. A stylus scratches lines in the column, and the sound is strangely soothing, like a broom sweeping dust into a neat pile, like a potter's fingers smoothing a wobble out of clay. You watch the difference between panic and process. Panic wants to skip. Process insists you finish each step. Process insists you let the beam settle level before you declare it level. It's the same patience you saw in the carpentry courtyard. Press, shave, check. Only now it's applied to trust. Your hosts lead you back to the side pier where the mislaid sacks rest under weighted matting. The mist is thicker here, the lantern halo's softer, and the world feels like it's been wrapped in cotton. You approach the bundles gently, as if they might spook and flee. Ridiculous. But your tired brain enjoys being ridiculous when it's finally not being cruel. The matting is lifted. The sacks are revealed again, sleeping in their wrong place. You check the knots that hold them. That slightly household-style hitch still sits there, doing its best. You feel a flicker of tenderness for it. Even mistakes, in this city, are often just someone trying to help with the tools they have. You loosen the cord carefully and retie it using the dock knot you practiced. Loop, pull, settle, testing tension with a gentle tug. The rope bites your palm in that familiar tarred way. You remember the dock post, the boat rocking, the line stretching and relaxing with water's patience. The knot answers with quiet confidence. It holds without drama. A small bowl of oil appears in someone's hand, not presented like a ritual, just offered the way a tool is offered when hands are busy. The oil is used first for the practical purpose. A smear along a cord so it slides cleanly. A touch on a splintered plank edge so it won't snag cloth. Then, without anyone announcing it, a bit is rubbed into your palm where the rope has scraped you raw. The warmth of that small care spreads instantly, and you feel your chest loosen in a way that has nothing to do with grain counts. Human kindness here is not theatrical. It's embedded. The sacks are moved back toward the main staging rows. Not dragged this time. Lifted. Shared weight. Controlled steps on damp planks. Someone angles a lantern so the path is clear. Someone else shifts a rope coil out of the way without being asked, because they've learned that tripping is the kind of comedy nobody enjoys at midnight. Back under the canopy, the chalk marks are redone. Fresh strokes, darker and clearer, pressed firmly enough to resist mist. A cloth wipes away the smeared remnants first, not angrily, just resetting the surface. The chalk squeaks softly on fabric, and you realize the sound is almost like the scratch of a stylus on a ledger, another small proof being made. The city loves proof the way tired minds love reassurance. Seals are pressed again. Clay is wrapped around cord knots, thumbprints smoothing edges. Patterned stamps press into the damp surface, leaving ridges that catch lamp light. The gesture feels familiar now, like the shrine offerings near the river, like the blessings in the market. A seal is an offering too, just aimed at order rather than gods. It says this is where it belongs, this is what it is, this is not going to wander off in the mist again. You watch the tally board once more. The marks now match the stacks. The stacks now match the ledger memory. The gap in the row is gone, the system's spine straightens. And something else happens, quietly, almost invisibly. The worker's shoulders drop. Movements soften. The dockside sound returns to its normal lullaby, ropes sliding, wood creaking, water slapping posts with steady rhythm. The confluence seam continues its slow swirl under moonlight, indifferent, and yet somehow approving, as if it prefers humans when they stop turning minor errors into tragedies. The mist doesn't vanish, but it stops feeling like a threat. It becomes atmosphere again, soft, sleepy, almost generous. Lantern halos are no longer suspicious, they're comforting. A boat bumps its mooring gently, and the rope holds, and you feel that same quiet satisfaction you felt when the scale beam found balance. You glance inland toward the city's lamps, remembering festival ash drifting like gray snow, remembering peacock motifs half glinting in corridors, remembering the palisade timber teeth that looked protective once you stopped fearing them. Pataliputra repairs itself the same way it builds itself, not through grand declarations, but through repeated small acts done with care. You realize the real resolution isn't only that the grain is back where it belongs. It's that the night has been made safe again. Safe enough that someone can go home and sleep without imagining loss. Safe enough that a ledger can be trusted. Safe enough that a tired mind, yours included, can stop scanning for the next crack. Your hosts guide you away from the canopy, back toward the lane that leads inland. The dock workers return to their steady motions, and the city exhales, its balance restored. And you carry that restoration with you, like oil on your palm, like a knot holding firm, like a seal pressed cleanly into clay. Proof that problems can be solved without becoming sharp, and that a capital can be powerful while still being gentle. You move inland with the calm still on your hands, and for a while the city feels like it's walking you home. The mist stays down by the docks, the confluence breathing in its own patient rhythm, while the lanes here grow drier and lighter, as if the ground itself is waking up. Lanterns burn lower now, pinched smaller, their flames reduced to ember glow. You pass quiet doorways and swept corners, and your feet remember the night in textures, rope bite and oil warmth, chalk squeak on cloth, cool shrine water on your wrists, the soft thump of grain returning to its proper place. The sky changes while you walk. A deep blue loosens. The edge of darkness thins. Somewhere behind rooftops, a pale line appears like a promise the world doesn't need to shout about. You find yourself angling back toward the palisade without deciding it in words. Your body simply wants the boundary again, the same way tired minds like a frame around their thoughts. The air cools and resin returns, faint at first, then clearer, the timber scent rising as if the wall is inhaling the new day. When the palisade comes into view, it looks different than it did at dusk. The sharpened tops still line the horizon like teeth, but dawn softens them into silhouettes, less threat and more outline. The wood catches first light along edges and grain, and you see what night hid, darker older posts beside lighter patched sections, seams where repairs were fitted without embarrassment, braces that turn stubborn timber into structure. You walk along the inside corridor again, where the packed earth path runs parallel to the wall like a steady thought. Watchtowers stand in their familiar spacing, and figures move at the tops with the same unhurried sweep. Nothing is frantic. The city doesn't wake by snapping, it wakes by stretching. Birds begin to claim the beams. One lands, flutters, settles. Another answers from somewhere near the river, the call thin and bright in the cooling air. The insects that sang all night quiet down, replaced by these small morning signals that say, yes, time is moving, but you don't have to chase it. You pass a gate area and notice the resin polish again, the sheen where hands have pushed and shoulders have brushed. In the half-light, the timber feels almost warm, as if it saved a little heat from yesterday and is now offering it back. You let your hand hover near the wood, close enough to feel presence without needing to claim it. The night's problem, mislaid grain, broken seals, worry blooming, feels far away now, not because it was nothing, but because it was resolved in the city's own language. Recount, retie, remark, reseal. The palisade has been speaking that language the whole time. Stand, hold, repair, continue. It's a philosophy disguised as carpentry. Dew darkens the ground near a tower base, and you remember the mist at the docks, lantern halos floating above water. Here, the damp is ordinary, just the world refusing to be perfectly dry. Someone has scattered a thin layer of sand along a slick section of path, grains catching light like tiny flecks. The same small kindness again. Someone thinking ahead so you don't have to fall. You slow near a repaired section where newer posts are fitted into older braces. The joinery is clean. The wood isn't pretending to be immortal. It has simply been maintained. And you find that comfortingly honest, because your own life has never been a single perfect beam. It's been patched too, by rest, by food, by small routines, by people who help you retie the knot when your hands shake. Light slides down the inner face of the wall, turning timber grain into long, soft stripes. The sharp tops look less like weapons and more like a crown of the forest, wood remembering its origin even as it serves the city. You walk past another tower, and the presence above you feels like a steady hand placed on the city's shoulder. Not controlling, just awake. You think of the shrine flame by the river, sheltered and patient, and you understand this is another kind of flame, attention kept lit so others can rest. Somewhere deeper inside, behind courtyards and shaded corridors, the peacock feather symbols still glow in your memory. Authority kept soft, legend kept warm. You don't need to see the throne to feel its idea, a center point, a promise that the city can settle. A cart rolls in the distance, a wheel complaint softened by space. A broom brushes a lane corner, brush, brush, pause. Morning begins not with declarations but with maintenance. You breathe in resin and cool air. You breathe out whatever last tightness you were carrying. The wall stands beside you, and for a moment it seems to offer a simple, almost embarrassing truth. You don't have to be perfect to be safe. You just have to keep repairing what wears down, gently, before it turns into disaster. The dawn brightens another shade, and the palisade's timber teeth become simply timber, plain and honest in the light. The night's lessons settle into you like a scale beam finding level. Patience is structure, small acts are strength, calm is built. And with that steadiness in your chest, you let your feet carry you onward along the wall, into a morning that feels less like a demand and more like an invitation. You don't leave Pataliputra with a dramatic exit. You leave it the way you've moved through it all night, by drifting, by letting the city walk you toward the edge of itself, while your mind stays soft enough to notice what matters. The dawn is pale now, not bright. The light feels rinsed, like water poured gently over everything to reset it. The palisade line falls behind you as you turn inward one last time, following lanes that are waking up in small, practical gestures. A door unlatched, a pot set on a low flame, a broom whispering over packed earth. The city doesn't switch on, it unfolds. You pass near the workshops again. The carpentry courtyard carries that sweet, clean scent of cut timber, and the shavings you saw last night are now slightly damp with dew, their pale curls darkening at the edges. It's almost funny how even wood shavings participate in mourning, as if nothing gets to stay unchanged. A potter's shelves sit in still order, clay pieces waiting with the patient confidence of objects that know their time will come. Near the forge, the air is cooler than before, but you can sense the heat that will return, the same disciplined flame ready to shape metal without theatrics. The market street reappears, quieter than it was, but already preparing to be itself again. Cloth awnings are adjusted. Baskets are shifted into place. Grains are poured and leveled, the heaps made tidy because abundance, here, is kept calm on purpose. A familiar chalk squeak sounds somewhere, marks being refreshed, counts being made readable. You remember how easy it was for mist to blur proof, and you appreciate the city's solution. Redo the mark, don't cling to the smudge. The smell of spices is lighter in morning air, less intoxicating, more honest. You pass jars of oil that catch the new light like slow gold, and you think of the oil rubbed into your palm at the docks, care delivered without ceremony. That small warmth is still there in your memory, the way the shrine flame is still there even after you've turned your back on it. Your feet carry you toward the confluence again, because some part of you wants to see water in daylight, as if to confirm it wasn't a dream. When you reach the docks, the mist has thinned. The river is clearer, its surface still textured but less secretive. The seam where two currents meet is visible now as a gentle shift in color and speed, a boundary that doesn't argue. The dockside has returned to its steady competence. Ropes are coiled neatly. Covers are tightened. Seals are intact. The grain sacks sit where they should, and that simple fact feels almost tender. The problem from the night doesn't linger as anxiety. It lingers as a lesson. You can misplace something important and still recover it without tearing the world open. A boat rocks against its post, and you watch the rope line stretch and relax with each small lift of water. Loop, pull, settle. Your hands remember the motion, and your mind borrows its meaning. Hold, but don't strangle. Secure, but don't panic. Let movement exist without calling it disaster. You stand there long enough that the confluence becomes what it always was, not a symbol you must interpret, but a living fact that keeps the city fed and connected. Trade arrives. Trade leaves. Water keeps moving. The capital holds. And then, as you turn away from the river, you feel the peacock-throne lower again. Not as a corridor hush this time, but as a quiet ember you carry. You don't need to see gilded feathers or shining eye spots. You just hold the idea of a center point, a place the city believes in when it needs to settle itself. The myth isn't there to be proven. It's there to steady people, the way the palisade steadies the boundary, the way a seal steadies a cord knot, the way a shrine flame steadies a traveler. You take one last slow route inland, letting the city's layers overlap in your memory. Timber teeth at dusk, watchtowers sweeping patient attention, confluence moonlight and lantern halos, market measures, workshops shaping patience into objects, festival ash drifting like soft snow, miss turning a small error into a moment of fear, then process turning fear back into balance. A touching farewell arrives without announcements. It comes as a sensation. The city has held you gently all night, and now it releases you with the same quiet competence. You feel it in the way your shoulders sit lower. You feel it in the way your breath travels farther down. You feel it in the way your thoughts stop rehearsing and start resting. You reach the edge of where the lanes widen back into the world outside the palisades, and you pause. Not to grieve. Not to cling. Just to notice. Pataliputra doesn't promise you a perfect tomorrow. It offers you something smaller and more reliable. Repair what wears down, mark what matters, hold what needs holding, and let the rest move like water. You carry that out with you like a sealed bundle, simple, secure, quietly yours. The morning light keeps brightening, but it does it gently, as if it doesn't want to startle you awake. You let your eyelids grow heavy in the safest way, like curtains settling after a long day. In your mind, the confluence keeps flowing, two rivers meeting and smoothing into one another without friction, without shouting, without needing to be anything except what they are. The dock post stands steady, ropes breathing with the water's small rise and fall, holding boats the way a calm hand holds a tired wrist. Somewhere inland, lantern cups dim into ash and memory, and the last warm scent of spice drifts away like a thought you don't need to chase. The palisade remains, timber points softened by dawn, quietly drawing a line between what can harm you and what can reach you tonight. Even the peacock-throne lore becomes softer, not a glittering object, just a warm ember of steadiness you keep tucked in your chest. You take another slow breath, longer than the last, and feel the night's sharp corners dissolve, the way chalk dust dissolves after the mark is remade, the way mist dissolves when the sun returns. Your body understands that you've done enough. You've walked enough. You've carried enough. Now you get to put it down. Let the city fade into a gentle blur behind your closed eyes. Let the river sound become a quiet, repeating hush. Let your thoughts loosen their grip and drift, light as ash, down into sleep, steady, safe, and very, very slow. End of story. Sweet dreams.